everyone. Happy Friday. It's close to the end of February, which is weird to me because it seems like it's just a blink of an eye and we're done and almost into March. But today I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about XR technology and learning more about that. And we have Nadia with us today. She is the co-founder at TecnoLatinx XR Lab. So Nadia, hello, how are you doing?
Hello, thanks for having me on here.
Yes, I'm super excited to learn more about you and the things that you're doing and how you're helping to mold the future of engineering and manufacturing. So, can you just give us a little background information? Like, who is Nadia? What are some of the things that you're doing? What inspired you to co found TecnoLatinx? And, like, what's your background in engineering and manufacturing? How did you get involved with this sector?
Of course, yeah. Pleasure to meet everyone out there. My name is Nadia M. Bauta. I am an LA, born and raised girl, but I have been and had the privilege to also live in other cities across our awesome country, including New York City, where I actually started my career as a attorney, specifically an intellectual property attorney. So even as a little girl, that was my mindset, thinking I'm going to go into law. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But underneath that, I also was, in hindsight, a maker. I had early access to a computer. I had access to internet, and that really opened up in terms of my identity, how we communicate, how I access knowledge and information. And it always really stayed with me as I then embarked on what I thought would be, the career that I would have throughout my life. And come now, New York City, I'm there starting, started past the bar. Started practice, got into general business law at first, civil rights law, and then I found my niche in intellectual property law. And at that time, New York City was going through really a push to create what is now they call it the Silicon Alley of New York City. It was right in the Flatiron District. So the city itself was really trying to incentivize and bring a lot of companies to start and grow in New York City and create good jobs, essentially. And so I got to be part of that and witness that as I am, an intellectual property attorney working with the startups that are now coming into this exciting time in technology. That's when Google opened an office out there. Facebook, now Meta, at the time also opened offices out there. And then I was working with startups that were really trying to, protect their intellectual property, meaning whether it's something as basic as their copyrights, trademarks, looking to ways to protect, through patent law. And so I got to see the startup culture through that lens. And then I got like the itch to want to be on the other side of the table, if you will, and really dive into the startup scene. New York Tech Meetup was a big deal back then. A lot of companies, basically got to showcase what they wanted to do and participate. And that was me. I started to be and want to do that myself. Then I got to get a really cool job with the city itself in their Economic Development Corporation, NYC EDC. And that really changed in terms of how I see the world, how I think of economic development, community development. Um,
Mhm.
Companies like WeWork, General Assembly, they started because there was a strategic investment in them through a grant. $250,000, started those companies that we still and are still growing today. And that was because, again, the city of New York wanted to have and be part of this tech innovation and tech ecosystem that they were co-creating with the startups that were there and the companies that were wanting to grow there. So that really inspired me and was kind of like the journey that I went from, okay, this is law. I had done, at that point, I had worked in DC at the US Attorney's Office. I had done work even with the Navy doing JAG through internships. And I loved law. I still use it in every day in my practice. But then I just realized I was like, I really like what's happening here. I really love the startup scene. And I want
Mhm.
to participate more in it.
How many startups have you worked with in general? Do you have a number for that?
It's been numerous. I mean, one-on-one, it's I would say like 50 or so, and that's like solo entrepreneurs. So like especially
Mhm.
women entrepreneurs who were wanting to start their companies, protect their work, whether artists, through copyrights or publishing, literature, or trademarks, and then working with other colleagues who are more versed in like engineering as well, and like hard sciences to do like patent protection. But what I did love to do was also I participated in like startup, I would say like labs or startup events. And so I would be like the attorney in the room helping these emerging companies, ideate through things, innovate. And in that sense, then the numbers are in like the hundreds in terms of entrepreneurs that I got to see and be part of their
Yeah.
learning journey.
That's really cool. You have such a diverse background, and I just could probably talk to you for hours and just pick your brain on different things that one of the things that you claim to be is a maker, and I think that's such an interesting term. So can you provide what your definition of a maker is? Because I think there's a lot of people out there making things, but what differentiates it, I guess, from like someone who might consider themselves an engineer? Because I think engineers, manufacturers are here, but what define as a maker in your personal experience?
Yeah, so how I see it is, what is making in itself. It's applying creativity to to solve for something,
Mhm.
and it could be a physical product or it could be I even expanded more in terms of like just different methods or solutions to get things done. And so that's where like the creativity in that maker, I really, lean on that to really expand the definition of what a maker is, driven by curiosity, and wanting to be, always creative first. And if someone who thinks of like, oh, there's these hurdles, that's not a hurdle. It's I could figure it out. I'm going to solve for this. I'm going to be persistent. I'm going to, figure it out no matter what. And so like the maker, more than anything, maker mentality is how I identify, and also building, expanding on that. And that's what I do through my work now through the TecnoLatinx, which is creating and thinking about this maker identity, the STEM, or expanding XR and STEAM identity. That starts really early for folks, right? For me, it started having access to a computer, having access to internet, and seeing how I fit and participate in that world, going from consumer to going into someone who wants to make something, for the internet, make something for the metaverse.
Mhm.
That kind of shift in mentality is how I like to just expand that definition a little bit. And of course, when it comes down to creating products, you have to have, some of the baseline engineering principles and mindset
Mhm.
and skills. But I like to think of it a little bit more expansive because, again, it's about creative solutions and applying them to the problems we want to solve. And so that's how I look at making and building those STEM identities, especially early on, because that's what guides us through life. That's what, again, guided me into saying, okay, I'm going to go into law, but here I find myself, through the startup scene, through technology, and now through this awesome, additive manufacturing, 3D printing world that I love to apply my skills in. And it still comes up. I'm still think of myself as a maker, as someone who's still in law. And it makes a great, I guess, mix,
Yeah, combination.
multidisciplinary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. So let's talk about XR technology because it's not a term that I see in a lot of the places that I'm involved with because I do focus on industrial manufacturing, and so like there's additive manufacturing, there's CNC machining, and then augmented reality, right? Is a term that's coming up a lot, and there's a lot of facilities that are using that for like facility layouts, where your machines are going to fit, how they're going to fit in your current infrastructure, and then training your next generation workforce is sometimes connected with those types of technologies. But XR technology is not really one if you're not within that space that you hear a lot. So can you kind of explain what that is and how it relates to what you're doing at TecnoLatinx?
Yes, of course. So XR, it's an umbrella term. It's extended reality. It's a term for immersive, emerging technologies, including, yes, augmented reality, virtual reality. I also include there, artificial intelligence, mixed reality platforms, real time game engines like Unity, Unreal, and, working on those. So hardware and software tools, and of course, additive manufacturing, 3D printing. And so what TecnoLatinx does, and the word is tecnología, so technology, Latin, because being Los Angeles, being from the community I was born and raised in, I knew I could super serve that demographic. Bilingual, LAUSD, which is our school district here, is 70% Latino. And so it made sense to go in with just like in trademark law, descriptive of the services we want to provide.
Yeah.
And the X came in because in math, principles like the endless possibilities. And so combining that now with XR Lab, XR, the umbrella term that I just mentioned for the emerging technologies, hardware and software tools, and also the lab part, a place where you can go. There's knowledge, there's experimentation that comes into play. It's an environment where there's pros that can guide you through these, new emerging technologies as to what fits and what you could experiment with for your content creation, for your, what you want to make and do in the world. And so that's XR, and that's kind of where TLX comes into being there.
I love how you're connecting, you know, the name with what it is, the cultural aspect of it, and then, where you were demographically, because I think it's important that we find these creative ways to be more inclusive for different demographics, because right now, as you know, with the percentages of manufacturing, diversity is so important for the advancement of innovation. And I think it's really cool and creative that you're creating this space that's going to attract groups that we normally don't attract into this space. Like, representation matters. So what was like the defining moment, and some of the gaps that you were seeing within your area that inspired you to really start this lab? Like, what sort of things are you helping to solve with what was missing in your area of where you started it at?
Of course, yeah. And I would say for TecnoLatinx, our community is all inclusive. Our mentors are all across the board in terms of backgrounds, ages, skill sets, and truly reflective of, again, like Los Angeles, but across our country. So it's definitely multicultural and beyond just the TecnoLatinx portion of it. From, I would say, how we are inclusive and how we do that is going back to the sense of community building, as
Mhm.
a lab. When you come into the space, think of like when you've gone into a space and you're like, okay, all these thoughts that come into mind, like how am I going to contribute to this, to here, what is going to be my role in this, what are the skills I'm going to be able to apply, what am I going to learn here? Those kind of questions are questions that drive then how we address our audience. What were the gaps that I kept seeing? Well, let's go back to New York City and the startup scene. The folks across the table from me, time and time again, were not in terms of the great diversity we have in this country, they were not reflecting that, and not reflecting then, therefore leaving on the table a lot of creative ideas. And at the end of the day, money, because the more creativity, the more ways that we think of solving for something, that translates into addressing business models that then we could leverage and grow and continue to solve for things that we ourselves may have not thought of, but someone else with a different skill set and background, brings to the table. And so I kept seeing kind of that gap in the entrepreneurship teams, the startup teams. And now fast forward, understanding that we are at an inflection point, a new, in a way, industrial revolution of how we work, how we train, how we experience communication. All these things are completely being disrupted in a large scale
Mhm.
as we speak. And I want, thinking of myself as a little girl, like, how did I want to participate? Well, addressing that little girl in the room, and what, and then scaling that over into the communities that I would like, to serve across the board, across ages. Our students are actually, that come into our lab space, and we have a headquarter, the nonprofit sits in downtown LA, but we're a mobile lab. So when we work with academic institutions, whether it's in the K-12 setting or
Mhm.
universities or nonprofits, we go over to, to them, or corporations that we also want to bring XR just knowledge and ideas to. We go into that space, and we are across age groups. We just had a health a learning experience where our learners were from 65 to 78, and then we had XR trainers that are from like middle school into college age, and then now our senior citizen community who want to continue to learn and be creative, and have never touched a headset before. But because we create that, I would say, hub, that friendly space, they feel
Yeah.
comfortable in doing so. And whether it's literally speaking their language, or having them understand that we are all new to this technology, that really is a switch that happens where they don't feel like they've been left out, or it's too late. um,
Yeah.
or even for students that are immersed in all kinds of technology, but as consumers, not as creators and makers.
Yeah, I think that's cool because that was going to be one of my next questions is how are you connecting generations with one another? Because right now in industrial manufacturing, we have at least 5 generations within the workforce, and sometimes there's a disconnect between those generations because they don't really know how to communicate with one another. But we talk about this, idea of mentorship, not just older generations mentoring younger generations, but vice versa. Younger generations can mentor older generations. And I think with this immersive technology, that's one way that younger generations can really connect with the older generation. So, can you provide some success stories in terms of like mentorship and bringing those generations together, especially within like the industrial manufacturing space? Do you have any case studies for us that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what connects the two, across age, is having the curiosity and being open-minded to
Mhm.
to that learning curve. Um, when students come to our lab, the first thing is, okay, how it's like creating and becoming an XR ambassador. And that is going through the, experience of, we introduce them to the bandwidth, all, across the board of different software and hardware tools, virtual reality. Here, try on the headset. This is augmented reality. This is how you do it. This is 3D modeling, across ages, right? So everyone is going and being introduced to these new platforms. Now we have a baseline of, okay, they become an XR ambassador, because then they themselves could turn to their loved one and friends and talk about their experience and their XR journey, and encourage others to at least know about it and think about it. Then we
Mhm.
get into the place of XR facilitators. So now they know how to put on a headset, do an onboarding for someone else. And we typically pair, for example, in this really cool healthcare project that we did, we paired different age cohorts together. So we have your college students, you have your more, senior exec level folks. They come together and they have to troubleshoot together. They have to onboard together, and they learn from each other. They have different skill sets, different experiences. And so just creating that moment of exchange and opportunity to get to know each other, to learn
Yeah.
together, those are where those success stories start to come from. And then they start to graduate into, going from XR facilitating to then going to more of like tech support and guiding people to troubleshooting. Okay, that's not working. Now you could do ABC. Then you get someone who levels up in skills because now they have more hours under their belt, and now they could take someone through enabling, right? Assessing what a company may need to onboard more XR tools to their workflows. Then you get into innovation facilitators. Now they're thinking outside the box and could start to co-create and co-design. And that's where those age groups of experiences really come into a really successful blend, because you have, maybe a younger learner who is more comfortable because every day they're on, different platforms, from Roblox to social media platforms, creating and experimenting, to someone who has industry knowledge and could apply that industry knowledge and say, well, let's think of it this way. And those moments of exchanges are really powerful, and create those success stories that then encourage others around them, as then, them becoming ambassadors of XR technologies and applying it in many different ways,
Mm-hmm.
in their own fields, in their own communities, in their own networks. And so it's like leveling up little by little, but creating those moments where they have a common goal, like whether it's a project goal or to get through an interval together of a learning curve module.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's learn what it means to 3D print and have a correct 3D model to be able to do that for. Um,
That's really cool and interesting. So, can you kind of break down then what it would look like? So, let's say that I'm someone that's new to TecnoLatinx and I want to sign up for what you're trying to teach. Like, how is that process? Where do I go? What can I expect? What sort of learning curve is there? Like, do I need to bring any experience to this space? Or is it for all levels of like
it's
experience and knowledge?
Yeah, it's definitely for all levels. For example, we like to have cohort driven
Hmm.
like experiences. And so we try to have at least a match of, like, our last cohort was 12 individuals came together, their college level, right? And they came from different majors and different disciplines. And so bringing in different skills. But we said across the board, you do not need any technology knowledge. There has to, no base foundational skills required, because it's about experimenting and a deep, not a deep dive. It's just, here's a demo on these tools, and then you are yourself, you're self driven. You're going to have to put in what you want to get out of this. You're going to do to learn, and then learn to earn, because we do pay our folks once they learn and go through our learning experiences, or
Oh,
literally
that's
get paid to learn as well, depending on the programs that they come into. The college students, for example, it was a program much like work study. So they came, we were a host site as a nonprofit. They came on board to us, zero experience with technology, maybe dabbling in like maybe 3D modeling here, maybe wanted to be an engineer at one point, but were then bounced out of that, the leaky pipeline problem with STEM majors or STEM
hmm
career pathways, and that's kind of the start. Curiosity. You don't have to have skills or a skill base to start learning with us. And cohort base is really cool, because then different folks become peer mentors to each other, and they feel encouraged. And then there is what starts to be that social currency, like, oh, I know how to do that, for VR. And they exchange that, oh, I got you. I could figure out that 3D model and why it's not printing correctly. And then we start to see those things slowly, organically emerge, because it comes from the students. They have to have that drive to put in the time to learn, and we provide the space and the tools, access to a headset, access to the software, a computer, and the right environment, that friendly environment to ask questions. We all, failing forward. There's many tech glitches. A lot of the times you don't know if it's you or the bug or like the
Yes.
internet, so creating that friendly environment. And so when someone wants to participate with us, they usually come in as cohort through a nonprofit that we partner with, through or an academic institution or a program that we go and we go into a school to implement. It really depends, and it's been varied. Or even the amazing art center here in Pasadena, the School of Art. If you're familiar with it, art and design, we got to go into their immersion lab, bring some of our students, and then learn from their students, and have this really cool exchange of knowledge and ways to apply now this tech to different fields, whether architect, product design, etc.
How does XR technology really enhance education?
Sorry, the internet cut out.
And I'm coughing and trying not to get that
Okay.
on the recording, but how does XR technology really enhance education and workforce training?
Of course, yeah. XR is, at the end of the day, it's tools, it's hardware, but it's able to take you in an immersive learning journey. It's thinking of it from going from a flat screen to inhabiting that space. And in AR, it's an overlay. And so, now I'm a new person in learning additive manufacturing workflows. I want to get a job, and now I want to train. Do I have to be at that physical location? Do I have to be in front of that machine? Not necessarily. You could now put on a headset. You're now immersed into that 360 environment. It's interactive in some instances, or it's a headset that overlays with the real world. And so now I'm looking at the physical machine. These instructions are coming into frame, or maybe someone is even guiding me through it. Maybe on the side now, my virtual digital professor appears and tells me, okay, these are the steps you have to follow. And be guided through now this learning journey in a way that's personalized, because now you're in a headset. It's at your time, at your pace. You don't have to travel to that location. And it's also really awesome because that tech mentor that is teaching you could be in New York, you're in LA, they could be in Kansas City, you're in Colorado, and everyone is learning together through these immersive learning experiences. Or even let's apply it, to what we do with our students in K to 12. A history lesson. Instead of literally reading about it on a book, now you could put on a headset, or you could, scan a code of an AR and an AR book. It populates an amazing animated scene of that history that you're instead reading. Now you're looking at it, and you're able to maybe, open up the different aspects and move it around, interact as if it were a physical object. And now you're really immersed into that experience. We have another student, for example, that is in psychology, and she wants to go into learning about like the brain and how, all those things interact. Well, now there are experiences where you can literally dissect a human brain virtually and not leave your living room, and not have to, have physical a
Pick up
physical
a mess.
so it's just like and for her, she said, oh my God, I wish I would have had this when I started, my learning journey, because I would have discovered, like in real time, like all these intricate parts of the brain, and it made just so much sense to her. Or a student who really was able to dive into a lesson. We have an experience called Pachuco XR, which is a historic learning experience on the Zoot Suit riots that happened here in LA in the 1940s, during the World War II. Well, instead of reading about it, now you put on a headset and you're immersed into that experience. You're seeing historic images, you're immersed in those historic moments, you're seeing the newspapers of the time, you're seeing individuals that, appear before you in a almost a gameplay environment. So they could be your colleague that is now dressed in a zoot suit next to you. You're seeing a lowrider, car in front of you, and you're experiencing the scene culturally, historically, whether it's a zoot suits or whether it's an experience here in LA.
Yeah,
It's immersive in that way.
I think that's fascinating because one, what I'm thinking about immediately too is individuals who are neurodivergent, and learn at different rates or learn better in different atmospheres and settings. So like um, one of the things that I immediately think about is my daughter when she first started taking her anatomy classes to be a surgical nurse. She struggled with sitting still and having to read long things of text, and she just does better when she can have some sort of interaction with what she's learning. So hands-on is better for her. People can retain more information when they have an emotional connection to it. So if you feel somewhat personal with what you're doing, you're going to retain more information around that topic with that emotional connection. So I think it's interesting that XR has that ability to maybe create some of those emotions and more intimate connections with the subject matter of what they're having the headset on for. What do you think about that?
I think, yeah, exactly, and then it also reminded me. We had an experience where it was a mom and son duo came over, and they wanted to experiment in in XR tools, and we introduced them to the bandwidth of it. Demonstrated across, and the son was also neurodiversity on the spectrum, and
Mm-hmm.
he had difficulty smiling in person. And in VR, as soon as he got his headset on and he created, we worked with him to create his avatar representation, his digital twin, to his liking, to his making. And then his mom also inhabited the space with him. And they explored a little bit the metaverse together. And there was a function on the handheld that if you moved it a certain way, it would mean that you're smiling. And so it was like he pressed that button and his digital avatar smiled, his representation smiled, and his mom was like, oh my god, he never, like, that is such a difficult task for him, just to smile.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was able to do that and be safe, feel safe in that space, experience his, the metaverse opportunities that then he loved and he wanted more of. It really created, that really left an impression in me as to the many possibilities that this has
Yeah.
introduced us to. And then you have students that, much like you shared, they want to go into law and have to present a case in front of a jury, and they need that experience of professional development. Well, being able to do that ahead of time and have that practice at home with a real time, an AI powered jury in front of you that's reacting, courtroom noises, the judges in front of you, and to be able to have that simulation and go through it at your pace multiple times to when you really get to that moment, you're prepared, you feel confident. That's an invaluable professional development moment as well. So we have a whole spectrum of expression that's now possible, or an extension of expression. And then we have professional development, being able to go through these simulations and learn and go through all the feels, all the emotions, all the anxiety that comes in new experiences, and be able to do it on one's own time before you get to that moment, and just feel more confident in
I
it.
just
So
I just saw a video of a young woman who was presenting. I think she was going through whatever. I don't know how it works with lawyers, but she was going through the process, I think, of gaining whatever she needed to gain. And she had to present in front of a panel of judges. And she ended up fainting.
of
And
course.
everybody had to like pick her up and stuff. And then she goes, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? And the judges just all started laughing. So maybe if she had an experience with a headset, she'd be able to go through all those
Yeah,
nerves and not.
exactly. It's like when I went to, right before going to law school, there was like this organization that does like a boot camp. They take you through the
Mhm.
rigors of right before you're about to be traumatized with all the reading and all this stuff of like the learning curve of law school. Well, I wish I would have had, that VR experience of taking me through it all, because there was there was a moment where it's like of overwhelm. For some
Yeah,
folks, it leads to that. For other folks, it's like this really high anxiety moment. But yes, VR is very awesome for those instances where we could have some practice before we get to the real deal.
yeah. So can you break down some of the biggest challenges getting companies to adapt things like XR for learning and training? Like what have you seen to be the biggest obstacles or concerns?
I would, so, one of the biggest things is the fact that acquiring like the software and hardware is it's costly, and then because we're on like almost an now 18-month or even less cycle of new updates and new technologies, investing in that, just the emerging technology tools, like there is this unknown as to the return on investment, and so there's hesitation just to even start to think about adopting XR technology and applying it to their workflows. That is one that could be addressed by doing a low level kind of like demo, diving into, maybe having a designated person who's more tech inclined, dive into the XR that may be applicable and like transferable skills that could apply there, and
Mhm.
do a demo, a pilot program, to kind of overcome the cost factor and the unknown ROI on technology. And there's now enough like data driven case studies out there that are applicable to different industries that people, could also start to see whether this is good or not for their company at this point in time, or maybe wait a little bit, or maybe adopt one aspect of MTech versus this whole like kind of tech stack of it. The other big thing is the upskilling of like the workforce and increasing that XR literacy. That's, those are one of the things that we help solve for by essentially creating individuals that when they graduate, different learning programs, whether it's in college, apprenticeships, or come to us wanting to just, have a different skill, we're helping to address that, and have like a baseline of XR literacy. Because then they come into your company and they are able to, again, be an XR facilitator, introduce their other, workers and peers into, hey, let's try this, or maybe we could be more efficient because there's this really cool tool that now we could use, whether it's AI or XR, AR, VR, technology. That's one that the workforce isn't quite there yet. So we're,
Mhm.
addressing that scaling up across the board. And then the other is they, individuals, they want seamless integration into what they're already doing, which kind of hits at the other two. And that sometimes, doesn't feel, again, there's a cost and resource, human resource, budget, finance resource that needs to be applied into these XR workflows coming into play. But once
Yeah.
one has an understanding and at least a baseline, then you can focus on modular. Let's apply this, let's demo that, let's see if this works in this small kind of pilot kind of scale way, to overcome those moments of, we don't know if this is going to be good for our return on investment. But the reality is that once the workflows do come into play and are streamlined, then efficiencies do increase, because like in the training programs, instead of having to physically have people come and have a physical location, now you can send out a headset, everyone onboards. It could be decentralized, and you're onboarding and training people on a headset, or even through an AR manual where it's like mobile based. Okay, now you click on this tool and it opens up a module and you learn to that equipment, instead of having to be at a physical location. So once
Mhm.
people overcome that, I don't know if then they start to see like really these are amazing solutions to onboarding folks, to training individuals, to upskilling folks, and to just thinking differently about how we work and communicate generally.
Yeah. So, from a legal standpoint and ethical standpoint, are there any concerns that we should be thinking about as XR technology continues to evolve? And I guess to pair up with that, are there any like misconceptions about it that you'd like to clear up?
I would say one of drawing from like the participants, and now like our community experiences that we've had, and personal experience, is when you put on an XR tool like a headset, it's already, it's doing a couple things. And you could have some settings where you disable and things like that, but there is eye tracking, right? There's a lot of data that's being also in terms of your biometrics for some devices or some experiences. And so one has to be okay in having this exchange of, I'm going to give up a little bit of this data because I want to learn this other cool stuff. Or, also having a switch as to like, eye tracking means that now I'm able to understand where, as a, in my learning training, my workers are focused on, instead of being focused on this part of the module or this part of the training experience or this part of like the hardware that they're learning to onboard onto. Now you're getting extra data, and this is an exchange that needs to happen, right? The person that's being trained and the trainer, they have to have an understanding and transparency as to what's happening and why we're doing this type of training and onboarding, and what hand
Mm-hmm.
tracking mean, or eye tracking, biometric hand tracking means, and that exchange of data. And I would say beyond that, the big thing in terms of ethics to AI and also XR is that we need to make sure that a lot of people are included, that there is diversity in the folks that are now part of the experience, because then they're contributing in a way that is accounting for different backgrounds, different experience, different learning pathways,
Mm-hmm.
different age groups. And so I would say that trumps everything. It's making sure that, with whether we're making XR, whether we're training with XR, that we're addressing that in the room. That is making sure that when we're building these technologies, when we're using these technologies, we're accounting for the diversity that should be accounted for: skill diversity, age diversity. And I feel like having that in mind, these implementations could really be something that we're all more excited about than fearful of because of privacy or data
Yeah.
concerns. And then there's some companies, that are doing it really cool. For example, NVIDIA has an AI multi-model tool right now that they've partnered with like Getty Images and also Shutterstock. And what they do is that, through an actual licensing, and everyone involved, like the photographer who took the picture, the rights, to that image, the people in the image, they're all part of the process. They all know that, oh, my image is being used in this really cool AI way, and that is you're prompting. This is a historic site image. Let's do a really cool prompt, and now extend this visual to create more. Like if we had taken, instead of two photos in that moment, 10 photos that are derivative works from that AI or that image. And AI is helping kind of do that really cool stuff. And it's done in a way that there is IP accounted for, intellectual properties accounted for, someone's copyright, the
Mm-hmm.
data, and the ethics behind that. So there are ways that it could be done really well. Transparency is key, and also inclusion as to who is at the table when these decisions are made and these hardware tools and software tools are being trained and created.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I just feel like that there's going to be a lot of cool upcoming trends that we see in the near future, especially when it comes to like documenting tribal knowledge and getting different languages included in certain training aspects. Are there anything in particular that you are super excited about in terms of what's to come in the future with XR technology?
I just really love the idea that, XR really is expansive, and XR is applicable across industry, and it's really revolutionizing how we, again, like, work together, how we communicate with each other, how we go about and think about our, even, ourselves and our identity, because it's really cool that now I could work collaboratively in not a 2D flat way, but in a 3D spatial dimensional way with someone across, in a different country. I really love that idea of collaborating on that way for additive manufacturing. It's amazing, and it's super exciting about that, because think of like how, redefining how we design, prototype, interact with physical and digital objects. XR provides immersive visualization and interaction with 3D models that, before you physically produce them, enhancing design precision, reducing costly errors. We see it in aerospace, automotive, healthcare. Engineers are able to inspect modified digital twins of products in a way that we haven't done before. So I'm just excited to see it apply across the field, and for folks to really be excited to participate in it as it becomes more readily accessible. It used to be where you had to have a headset and it has to be tethered, like attached to a really high-powered computer. Then in 2019, it was untethered, right? Now it's just all in headset. You could create an endless canvas of art inside a headset. You could create a 3D model and share it with other. One asset, many uses. It's just a really exciting time to be participating and to be contributing to the XR scene.
I'm super excited to see how it continues to bring us together, because one of the things you brought up too is just that cross-cultural experience where you could work with somebody in another country on a problem that you've been struggling with, and then just learn how other people are doing things from across the world. And that cross collaboration, I just think, is so important to drive innovation and keep us progressing forward, because you get outside of that group think a lot easier with some of these technologies, which is really fascinating and cool. And I think people need to stop watching all those crazy movies about like robots taking over and just the end of the human race. But Nadia, I really want to say thank you for you taking time out of your day and talking with us about XR technology and TecnoLatinx. I think this is such a fun area of where technology is going, and you're right in the heart of it. And it's so important that you are helping get people to understand how to use these tools. And it's really fascinating that you're doing it across generations too, because I think there's a lot of older generations that really are kind of intimidated by technology, and you're making it easy for them not to be. It was so cool to hear that you're helping senior citizens continue to learn. I think that's really, really cool. But I do want to give you a chance to ask our audience a question or provide a call to action. So, if there's one thing that you want them to do or take away from the conversation, what would that be? Or, if you have a big ask for them, what would your ask be?
I would say, think of yourself as someone who is not late to the game. It's unfolding in front of us, right? And so it's a really exciting time to start to participate, even if it means 10 minutes a day of learning a new XR tool, reading about, what is VR relative to this industry? What is AR, AI applicable to ABC that you are interested in? Definitely feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn is the best way. Find out, look up TecnoLatinx online or website as to the things we've done, the really cool projects that we've done and collaborations as an inspiration point to how it applies across the field, across ages and cohorts. And the ask is just, don't think of yourself as someone who's late to the game. Just think of yourself as someone who is curious and ready to dive into XR and how it applies to you and your personal journey, work journey, and just be excited about learning. It's a learning curve, but we're all in this together. And it's an exciting time to get into it and participate.
What type of partners are you looking for to collaborate with?
It's really cool because whether it's an academic institution that wants to bring us on board to expand the folks that they reach, and that whether it's, the UC system, we've worked with folks from community colleges, Cal State, Ivy League schools. They want to expand the pie. They have these great programs, but people, it's like saying this is the entry point and this is where our population is in terms of XR skills. We help them kind of just get to this point in terms of the digital XR literacy. And so whether it's an academic institution or a technology company that wants to, share their new tool, their software with a new audience, with a diverse audience, a diverse skilled audience, a age cohort audience. That's also an exciting partnership too, to continue to expand the knowledge base and the adoption of tools so that people apply it and become those content makers, those creators that we really need in this new way of thinking and working. So again, academic, technology companies, we're tech agnostic. We've worked with different hardware, different software tools, and also even city agencies that are workforce agencies that also want to expand how they approach folks too. Our additive manufacturing partners, they need more trained workforce, workforce folk. Well, we could help have the base and introduce individuals to that, skill set, but from a friendly point, a friendly starting point that addresses and meets people where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a ton of people that I want to introduce you to in all of those areas. So I'm going to send you a bunch of emails after our
Perfect.
conversation because I
Awesome.
think you will have some really great connections after that. Well, Nadia, thank you so much for joining me today on Mavens of Manufacturing. I really appreciate the time. For anyone tuning in, be sure to connect with her on LinkedIn and email her. I will have an article next week, just basically summarizing our key points that we discussed today on the episode, and I'll include all of her contact information in that article with her LinkedIn, her website, and the website for TecnoLatinx. So thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so
I hope
much.
you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This episode of Mavens has been sponsored by Fresh Horizons Group. Fresh Horizons Group is a family-run company that was founded on the premise of helping organizations and businesses better tell their story through high-quality branded apparel and promotional items. Freshen up your brand by contacting Fresh Horizons today at freshhorizonsgroup.com.